Councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting of the Council for July 2020. My name is Councillor Margaret Thomas, and as Mayor, I will be chairing this meeting. I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on and share the message of the elders. Kaya kaya Burdias, Marman, Yoks, Kalamunda, Nuna Mort, Nichikulan Nalamaya, Kalamunda Budja, Yayi, Nandurapan, Wajulas Kulan, Jina, Nuna Nicha, Nunga Budja, Nunga Burdias Kura, Yayi, Burda, Kedalak, Burda, Kaya, Yunga. Hello, welcome to our leaders, men and women who have come to our place this evening. And I'm happy to see you all standing on Noongar land of their leaders, past, present and future. Thank you. The operations of Council and the agenda for this meeting are governed by the provisions of the Local Government Act, standing orders and rules of conduct. All matters of business listed in the agenda will be dealt with as separate decisions of Council. Thank you for your attendance and interest. Do we have any apologies and leave of absence?
Through the chair, I don't have any apologies, but Councillor Billich did advise me she would be late, so we'll make an apology for now and we'll change the minutes if she arrives.
Thank you. Public question time. We have some questions from Michaelia Russo and they are on the screen. Ms Russo is not coming to ask the questions, but councillors, you could have a look at that. The questions were submitted in writing. We also have a question from Mr Peter Forrest, and I'll ask Mr Forrest to come to the microphone and ask his question.
Circulated today. In page 3, the crisis funding to do with this directs people who are potentially interested to speak with the city's community development team. Now, the community development team isn't identified in the community administration anywhere on the website, so I'd suggest it might be worthwhile the administration just checking that out, because otherwise it will be quite vague as to what they will do with it. The second question is to do with the, it's on the agenda, but it says that council meetings for December will be brought forward and not the 4th Tuesday, but it doesn't say what the dates are to be brought forward to.
Perhaps we could ask for a response to those two questions.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I ask the Manager of Public Relations to respond to the website issue, please?
Thank you very much for your question in relation to the COVID innovation grants and the COVID relief funding. I'm very pleased to hear that you did receive the email today. We have sent out a reminder to our community groups to encourage them, should they have projects that they'd like to be considered, to submit for funding. Should you have any questions at any time that you would like to direct to the City of Kalamunda, you simply need to call the city on 9257 9999. You don't need to contact a certain line to speak to different departments. By contacting us on 9257 9999, the City of Kalamunda will then put your call through to the team that is best suited to actually assist with that inquiry. So that's the reason that there's not a series of different numbers for people to have to call to speak to different departments, because we are one organisation, and it allows us to track your calls as well and to ensure that that matter is resolved and responded to and the like. You can also submit your request via email and it will be assigned to the relevant team. And within the email that you got from us today, you will have had a link as well to an an online application form. So simply give us a call, or if you like, Mr. Forrest, in this particular case, as I now know that you do have an interest, we're more than happy to arrange for one of the team to give you a call tomorrow and to assist with your inquiry.
Thank you. And do we
Thank
have...
you. In relation to the December meeting, it will be the 15th of December. On our website, it does actually say that the December meeting will be on the 3rd Tuesday of that month. That is on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. Petitions and deputations. Petitions, we have one petition listed in our agenda for all councillors to see from the President of the Probus Club of Kalamunda. Are there any other petitions?
Yes, there is another petition that came in late after the agenda was distributed. That's in relation to Kalamunda Road, the functional review and upgrade, a draft report that did go through public agenda briefing, however it was withdrawn and it will be coming through next month. So we will assess this petition in accordance with that report in August. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any applications for leave of absence?
There's two, they're up on the screen.
I note they're on the screen. So the first one is for Councillor Lisa Cooper from the period 17th of August to Friday the 21st of August. Do I have a mover? Councillor Blair, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. And the second one is for Councillor Sewell to be granted leave of absence from 10th of August to Friday the 14th of August. May I please have a mover? Councillor Giardina, seconded by Councillor Boyd. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. We have two lots of minutes. The first one is the ordinary council meeting held on the 23rd of June 2020. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ritchie? Oh, we need to back up and go back to deputations. I'll come back to the minutes. So we have 5 deputations. The first one is Mr. Aaron Lohman regarding item 10.1.1. I'll ask Mr. Lohman to come forward, state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Aaron Lohman. I'm from Element, 191 St George's Terrace in Perth. I also have with me tonight Mr. Will Main from Hawaiian in respect to this matter. Thank you for the opportunity to present and make a deputation tonight. I'm here on behalf of Hyde Park Management, being the owner of Hawaiian's Forestfield Shopping Centre. The deputation is in respect to amendment to the Wattle Grove Outline Development Plan. On behalf of Hyde Park Management, we've been requested to speak against the officer's recommendation to recommend that the Outline Development Plan be approved by the Western Australian Planning Commission. We also made a submission on this matter when the proposal was advertised. I note 6 objections were received against the proposal and 3 no objections. We understand the proposed amendment seeks to rezone a portion of the subject site from mixed use to commercial, with the commercial portion of the subject site being located on Hale Road. The remainder of the site will remain mixed use. A development concept plan was prepared to support the proposed amendment, and whilst Council did not advertise this information, we understand that the commercial zoning sought will allow for the development of a supermarket, a medical centre, community hub and tavern. The proposed amendment will allow for the development of an additional 3,270 square metres of shop retail NLA, whereas the existing Wattle Grove Village Centre currently provides approximately 3,700 of NLA. Thus, there is approximately 6,900 odd square metres of shop retail floor space that could be facilitated in that locality. State Planning Policy 4.2 Activity Centres for Perth and Peel requires a retail sustainability assessment, or an RSA, for a proposal that would result in the total retail floor space of a neighbourhood centre exceeding 6,000 square metres, or by expanding more than 3,000 square metres retail anyway. The proposal, as put forward, we say will facilitate or will cross both these thresholds. As the proposed amendment plans to exceed 3,000 square metres new floor space and the 6,000 square metres in combination with the existing proposal, we say that the RSA is required. We understand that a retail needs assessment as opposed to a retail sustainability assessment has been prepared, but there's a difference between the two. A retail sustainability assessment assesses the potential economic and related effects of a significant retail expansion on the network of activity centres in the locality. It addresses such effects from the local community access or benefit perspective, and is limited to considering potential loss of services and any associated detriment caused by the proposed development. Sorry, that's okay. Whilst the retail needs assessment has been prepared, an RSA is required so that the potential economic and related effects of significant retail expansion on the network of existing centres can be examined. A retail needs assessment, I should say, doesn't do this. It only considers demand. It is contrary to orderly and proper planning, in our view, to support the amendment without a retail needs assessment. Should Council consider not proceeding and requesting a retail sustainability assessment, the RNA should at least be subject to peer review in order to test its veracity. We note the amendment requires the approval of the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage /WAPC. In our view, it's highly questionable as whether the DPLH would accept an amendment which is without an RSA directly in conflict with their own policy, so State Planning Policy 4.2. In respect of the impact on existing retailers, the problem with such proposals is that they result in a loss of trade, catchment, and disrupt the established hierarchy of centres. Our client is seeing more and more of these proposals throughout WA, such as the one being considered tonight, and especially out-of-centre development. The reality is of such approvals that they affect the trading of established centres. Less trade equals poorer quality centres, as owners are less inclined to expand as rates as tenant rents drop. Degradation of the asset often results, which is negative for the community. We have also outlined this position to the City in our submission on the Activity Centre strategy on behalf of Hawaiian. Moving on from the retail sustainability assessment, a traffic impacts assessment or traffic impact statement has not been submitted. A shopping centre from 100 square metres to 1,000 square metres GFA ordinarily requires a traffic impact statement, and anything above 1,000 square metres would require a traffic impact assessment. This is to determine and make sure that the effect of the amendment does not negatively impact on the existing road network. It's clear that at least a traffic impact statement would be provided for the proposal and would be consistent with orderly and proper planning. To conclude, we would ask Council not support the proposal in the absence of a retail sustainability assessment or in the absence of a traffic impact assessment or traffic impact statement. We also reiterate that it is likely that the amendment, in the absence of a retail sustainability assessment, would fail when the matter is considered by the DPLH or /WAPC. We'd also like to Council to consider the compromises and negative impacts that may result from such an expansion of a centre on the existing hierarchy of centres. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr. Lohman? Thank you very much for coming to speak to us.
Thank you.
I would now like to invite Mr. Regan Cake to come and speak on the same item, 10.1.1. Mr. Cake, if you would also state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Councillors and City of Kalamunda officers. My name is Regan Cake from Dynamic Planning and Developments, 1529 Collier Road in Morley. And we're the applicants for the proposed structure plan amendment before you tonight as agenda item 10.1.1, which was lodged on behalf of our client, Mr. Kim Soo, who owns 310 and 318 Hale Road. As applicants for the amendment, we have worked closely with the City's officers for many months and are fully supportive of the officer recommendation for approval, as we consider this will be a positive catalyst for development on what is a tired site that has remained stagnant for a number of years. The reason for our deputation tonight, is to provide councillors with a brief overview of the amendment and to address in detail some of the concerns raised during the advertising period. The site itself, that is the subject of the structure plan amendment, consists of 3 properties known as lots 192, 193 and 194 Hale Road, 2 of which are owned by our client. In total, the sites have an area of 23,578 square metres and are occupied by existing buildings of a poor quality, which has deteriorated over a significant period of time. To the west of the site is the Hale Village Commercial Centre, which is where the Aldi Shopping Centre and 7-Eleven development are located. As outlined in the officer's report, the proposed amendment seeks to change the land use designation for a portion of the 3 subject lots. The result of the amendment will be that the lots change from a 100% mixed use land use designation to a 50% mixed use and 50% commercial land use designation. In the context of the structure plan and the surrounding development, this change is considered to be quite minor, as there is only a limited number of additional land uses that will become capable of approval. In addition, the amendment simply represents an extension to the existing commercial land use designation further along Hale Road. In addition, it is commented based on some previous comments from Mr. Aaron Lohman. The initial concept plan that was submitted as part of the amendment was obviously only sort of indicative. Discussions have since occurred with a number of sort of retail providers, and no interest exists for any sort of retail floor space beyond anywhere near 3,000 square metres. Relevant aspects included in the strategic planning framework that were reviewed as part of the amendment assessment include Perth and Peel 3.5 million, livable neighbourhoods, City of Kalamunda local planning strategy and the draft City of Kalamunda activity centre strategy. Whilst I do not have time to address how the amendment addresses the provisions included in each of these documents, in general the proposal is entirely compliant with the applicable strategic planning framework, as there is an expectation that growth in commercial centres will be required to service the forecast population growth. As part of the application assessment, the proposal was advertised to surrounding landowners. During the advertising period, a number of submissions were received in objection to the application. The core concerns expressed in these objections were 1, the impact of the amendment on existing retail providers, 2, the lack of consideration of traffic impacts, 3, points of vehicle access, and finally the lack of integration with existing development on Hale Road. I'd now like to just jump into each of these concerns in detail. With regard to the proposal's impact on existing retail providers, this matter will be addressed in detail by my colleague Dawson from Praxis, who is also presenting a deputation tonight. However, just to address this issue, we did prepare a retail needs assessment, which has demonstrated that sufficient capacity exists to accommodate the potential additional retail floor space that may result as part of this proposal, which is expected to be quite limited. It is noted that during the advertising period, a submitter expressed a concern that a retail sustainability assessment had not been provided. In this regard, we note that the proposed development of the subject site will not increase the retail floor space by 3,000 square metres, in spite of what a previous concept plan had illustrated. In this regard, the proposal would be exempt from the requirements to provide a retail sustainability assessment in accordance with the activity centres for Perth and Peel state planning policy. With regard to the insufficient traffic impacts and also the points of vehicle access, it is noted that a traffic report hasn't been provided. However, this isn't considered necessary for a number of reasons. Firstly, the amendment is very minor in nature and it simply extends the commercial land use designation further along Hale Road. Secondly, the properties are already able to be developed for commercial land uses under the existing mixed use land use designation. In this regard, only a minor number of additional land uses will be capable of approval should the amendment be endorsed. Finally, detailed traffic studies will be completed at the development application stage, which will examine the trip generation of the relevant uses being applied for, as well as appropriate points of vehicle access. Finally, the point on integration with the existing development. It is considered that this will be achieved seamlessly, as all sites will more than likely be the subject of a large-scale redevelopment proposal, which will require full demolition of any existing buildings. In this regard, connection and integration will be achieved with ease. In addition, design cues are likely to be taken from the adjoining development to ensure that a consistent streetscape and design narrative is achieved throughout the neighbourhood centre. With consideration of the points raised tonight and the amendment more generally, it is reiterated that we are fully supportive of the Officer recommendation for approval and consider that this amendment will be a positive catalyst for development on a site that has remained an eyesore for a number of years. In this regard, we kindly request that Council vote in support of the Officer recommendation tonight, and thank you. Happy to answer any questions if needed.
Councillor Ritchie.
Good evening. I have a question. You mentioned that the change would allow a minor number of additional uses. Could you outline what those minor numbers would entail, please?
At this stage, I don't know the figures off the top of my head. There's probably about 10 or 12 additional land uses, but at this stage, we're only really looking at a small sort of retail floor space to support a pharmacy and allied health facilities.
But with the change, sorry, as a supplementary question, with the change, what would it allow?
I think the concern from other members who provided a submitted is the shop land use. It would, I guess, provide an ability to provide that land use among others. I don't know off the top of my head the rest of them.
I have a question, Mr. Kay. Can you give us a little bit more information on the difference between a retail needs assessment and a retail sustainability assessment?
I'm sure my colleague Dawson from Praxis might go into this in a little bit more detail, but a retail needs assessment, I guess, generally assesses my understanding is that the population growth and the amount of retail floor space that may be able to support, considering the existing offerings available. And the retail sustainability assessment is more focused towards if, say, retail floor space of X was provided, what impact that would have on other centres in the vicinity.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Kay? Thank you for coming to speak to us.
Thank you.
I would now like to invite Mr. Dawson Damasi-Uning to come and speak to us. If you would also state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Dawson Damasi-Uning from Praxis. We are at 162 580 Hay Street in the city. Good evening, Mayor, councillors, and city staff. My name obviously is Dawson. I work with Praxis, and we have undertaken the retail needs assessment for the Wattle Grove subject site. Our analysis considered the supply and demand for shop retail floor space at a wider study area with a radius of approximately 5 kilometers and a suitable catchment for the Wattle Grove North Neighborhood Center defined by Tonkin Highway, Walshpool Road, East, and Rowe Highway. State Planning Policy 4.2 identifies a retail needs assessment as providing the information base to support planning decision-making through an assessment of projected retail needs of a community. Our analysis identified the current and future floor space supply of shop retail floor space and estimated future demand based on households and their expected retail expenditure. The provision of shop retail floor space per resident was compared to benchmarks to identify whether there was an equitable distribution of shop floor space. The analysis identified a gap in the provision of shop floor space in both the study area and the catchment area. The current gap in the catchment area is estimated to be just under 4,000 meters squared, increasing to approximately 6,000 meters squared by 2026. The implications of this analysis, this identified gap, include an inequitable distribution of retail floor space that causes local residents to undertake more of their daily and weekly shopping needs at centers outside of their local area, an associated leakage of expenditure from the Wattle Grove North Neighborhood Center, and a reduced likelihood of walkable shopping trips. There is the opportunity to address these problems by changing the zoning at the subject site from mixed use to commercial and allowing convenient, high-quality retail to be provided where it is needed. Community benefits stemming from this change include a greater diversity of offering for residents, a reduction in the travel burden for local residents that supports a walkable catchments as per state planning policy 4.2, high-quality retail adjacent to a proposed aged care facility, providing access to amenity for a growing demographic with less mobility, and the creation of construction and operational employment opportunities in the catchment. The retail needs assessment we have developed is appropriate for the purposes of supporting the proposed rezoning of the subject site, as it identifies the need for additional retail capacity to address a lack of goods and services available to the community. A retail sustainability assessment is required when a proposed development is over 3,000 square meters or total center equates to more than 6,000 square meters. As was indicated in the previous deputation, the development will be under this size. Excuse me 2 seconds. With regards to retail sustainability, providing capacity for a future development at the proposed site is seen to support retail sustainability, as it would help address an identified gap in the provision of retail floor space. It would provide a more even allocation of growth in catchment expenditure across the activity center network, meaning there would be no loss of services. It would generate greater community benefits without impacting the activity center hierarchy, and it would enhance the ability of Wattle Grove North to meet its purpose as a neighborhood center that provides for the daily and weekly shopping needs of its catchment. In addition to retail sustainability, unlocking the development potential of the subject site could potentially support economic resilience and assist the city's recovery from the COVID pandemic by generating construction and operational jobs. In conclusion, the rezoning of the subject site addresses a gap in the provision of shop retail floor space. It aligns with state planning policy 4.2, and it provides significant community benefits, including employment opportunities, equitable and efficient access to amenity, greater retail choice for residents, and increased turnover potential for the Wattle Grove North Neighborhood Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawson. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, on page 7 of the attachment, it talks about retail, medical and entertainment floor space. Can you expand on what you mean by that?
We have not developed the actual or contributed to the actual floor space uses that would be provided at the location.
I was wondering if the director might be able to enlighten us if he knows what entertainment is referring to.
Through the chair, that detail will come through any prospective development application. At this stage, we're not aware of any specific entertainment land uses, unless the manager for approval services is aware of any details that may come about as a part of a future development application.
Just to confirm through the chair, no, we're not aware of anything. As the director's indicated, we'll be waiting for a formal DEA to come in to establish the extent of the retail floor space they're proposing for that site.
Councillor Sewell, you have a question.
I'm just wanting to seek some clarification. So Through the chair, can I just confirm that a retail sustainability assessment didn't occur due to the size of the proposed site? Is that correct? Am I correct in my understanding of that?
Retail needs assessment was requested on behalf of the client. It was requested due to the lack of a development application from our understanding. However, we were just requested to do a retail needs assessment.
Are there any other questions? Thank you for coming to speak to us, Dawson.
Thank you very much.
I would now like to invite Mr. Matthew Reid to come and give his deputation on 10.1.2. Thank you, Mr. Reid. If you would also state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, councillors. I would like to just pass to my left and right an extract from your local planning scheme that I am going to be referring to tonight during my deputation. Thank you. And I can confirm that my name is Matthew Reid. I'm a lawyer. I'm a partner of Jackson McDonald Lawyers. We're located at level 17, 225 St George's Terrace, Perth. I'm here on behalf of my clients Hero Pty Ltd and Ovis Properties Pty Ltd. They are owners of land situate at Nardine Close in High Wycombe, and I'm speaking against the officer recommendation in respect of this item. You may recall that I came to the agenda briefing on the 14th of July 2020 and I spoke to you in respect of this item. By voting tonight in favour of the officer recommendation or the alternative motion, you will be directing the city to implement a change to the way in which it has applied its development contribution plan for the last 7 years. That change will involve telling all the landowners who have paid their cost contribution over the last 7 years that their payment was only an interim payment and was not a full and final payment discharging their liability under the DCP. To the extent that the city now determines that those landowners may have paid less than other landowners, the city will be telling them that they'll have to pay a top-up payment at some unknown time in the future. In regard to those landowners who are still to develop their land, the city will be telling them three things. Firstly, the city will be ignoring parts of the formula that is set out in the DCP for calculating the cost contribution because the city doesn't think it produces a fair rate in comparison to what earlier landowners paid. And this is despite the fact that the city just 2 years ago amended that formula to include the very thing that the city is now saying should be ignored. Secondly, the city will be telling the landowners that any payments made by them will only be interim payments, and at some point in the future, the city will require them to make top-up payments. Thirdly, the city will be saying to the landowners that they'll have to enter into an agreement with the city to charge their land in favour of the city to secure payment of that top-up payment whenever that might be at some point in the future. I said to you at the agenda briefing that if council was going to take anything away from what I said, it was this. The DCP is part of the city's local planning scheme. A local planning scheme can be amended by the city and its provisions changed. But before any amendment can have effect, the Planning and Development Act states that a formal process must be followed. To amend the DCP, the city must follow the complex scheme amendment process. The city did that back in May 2018 when it amended the DCP. However, it has chosen not to do so now. The city's planning officers have said to you, as the city's councillors and decision makers, don't worry about following the complex scheme amendment process. We don't have to do that. We've got legal advice to the effect that we can change what we've been doing for the last 7 years and interpret the current wording of the DCP in another way. a way which provides for interim cost contributions and top-up payments years after payments have been made. Now, I know as councillors, you're in a bit of a bind here. You rely on your planning officers to give you the correct advice, and in this case, your planning officers say that they've got legal advice from McLeod's and also legal advice from senior counsel at the bar that supports their recommendation to you. So as councillors, you're probably thinking and would say to me, well, look, I'm sorry, we're following what our legal advice says and what our planning officers recommend. But as councillors carrying out your roles and functions under the Local Government Act, before you make decisions, you are allowed to read the legal advice closely and ask for clarification or ask for second opinions on contentious matters before making final decisions. Lawyers have been known to get it wrong. Just ask anyone who's lost a court case. I'm a lawyer and I'm telling you that I disagree with the legal advice that you've been given and your planning officer's recommendation. Have I got an opinion from senior counsel? Yes, I have. Senior counsel's opinion, the one I've obtained, agrees with my view. And in light of my advice and in light of my client's advice from senior counsel, that's why it is continuing to pursue and proceed with her application to the State Administrative Tribunal to have the condition that's been imposed on her DA, providing for interim cost contributions and interim payments set aside by the SAT on grounds that it is an invalid planning condition. So what can I tell you to make you question the legal advice you've been given? Why do I say that the city can't just read new words into the DCP and instead must go through a complex amendment process if it wants to change the DCP? Now, I passed around an extract before and I'm going to give you an example. So if you have a look at that extract, that refers to clause 6.5 of LPS 3 and it contains provisions in respect of your DCP. Nowhere in clause 6.5 does it refer to those concepts of interest cost contributions, interim contribution rates and final contribution rates. They're not there because that's not how the city drafted the DCP. It's never what was intended by the city when it implemented the DCP. To say that interim cost contributions and interim rates can somehow be inferred and implied into the DCP because the DCP refers to concepts of fairness and equity is, with respect, it's misguided. The concepts of fairness and equity always have to give way to what is actually written into and expressed in the DCP. So going back to that extract, that provision is headed liability for cost contributions. And what this provision prescribes is that an owner's liability to pay the contribution arises by reference to the happening of 4 discrete events. And, most importantly, look at the words I've highlighted in yellow and underlined. The liability arises only once upon the earliest of those events. There's no suggestion in that provision dealing with a landowner's liability that more than one contribution can be demanded by the city. For example, an interim contribution followed by a final contribution years later. To the contrary, that provision speaks of one payment only upon the happening of one of the nominated events. That express provision of the DCP simply does not accord with the city saying that the DCP infers that contributions paid during the life of the DCP are interim, with final payments being made at the end of the life of the DCP. There are numerous other examples in the DCP where the express wording contradicts the position that the city is now looking to take. And that's why, if the city wants the DCP to provide for interim payments, it has to properly amend the express wording by going through the complex amendment process. So my suggestion to council in respect of this item is this. Don't make a final decision on this item tonight. Pass a resolution to defer the item to a later date, and in the interim, resolved to direct the city to get a second legal opinion from another firm or another barrister, if for nothing else but to confirm that the advice received to date is correct. Direct the city to get that law firm or barrister to consider the matter fresh without regard to the earlier advice and see if that second opinion does in fact come back the same as the advice that you currently have. If it does, you can be satisfied that in performing your functions as a councillor, you've made a properly informed decision. The DCP is a highly contentious matter, and the city has been heavily criticised in the past for the way in which it has dealt with the DCP over the years. For the sake of a further couple of weeks and the cost of a second legal opinion, the city could be saving itself from a further mistake about the DCP and suffering further reputational damage. And that's my deputation. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. That was exactly 10 minutes. Councillors, do you have any questions of Mr. Reid? Thank you very much for coming to speak to us. I would now like to ask Mr. Stuart Burney to come and give his deputation. Mr. Burney, please state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
Oh, hi. My name's Stuart Burney. I'd like to thank the Shire and the Mayor, councillors, for the opportunity to have a second discussion with you. Yeah, my name's Stuart Burney. My partner, Tanya Clavi, we own the property at lot 308. 166 Sultana Road West, and my submission is number 7 on the DCP review on the attachments. Yeah, we bought the property about 12 years ago, way before any of this sort of development has come along. And, you know, we've built a nice house to bring up our kids. And, yeah, I've been here all through the process as far as this industrial area projects developed, and many meetings. And, yeah, I've always been of the opinion that as things progressed, the road that we're involved with, Nardine Close stage, or where is it, Nardine Close Extension, Road 2A, and we're also involved with stage 2, the extension. We have just sort of come to the reconciliation that this was going to happen, and we accepted it, and because it was the only way that lots 51 and 50 could, or not 50, but lot 51 could get access for industrial development, and allow you know the properties to be sold at some date. So yeah, in 2016 December we signed a contract for the sale of the road reserve, which extends along the western boundary of our property, and it's about 3,000 square metres, and it's pretty well a straight corridor all the way to the driveway. I don't know if you can see point 65 in the DCP review. There's a picture there, and everything's pretty clear there. Yeah, so we signed that with the understanding that as part of that, to give access for ourselves and lot 51, there was a temporary cul-de-sac to be constructed at some stage, and really that was pretty vague, just that it was a temporary cul-de-sac at the time of signing, and with the understanding that this would be sorted in a reasonable time. back in 2016, and so since then we haven't really moved too far as certainty goes. Now we've got the road's been constructed, and you know we appreciate that, and we thank the Shire for getting that sorted. Now that road has a cul-de-sac at the end, which is for RAV7 turning, and as you can see, like my house is just right next to that cul-de-sac, about 1 metre from the road. So half of that cul-de-sac is, when they say temporary, it's actually sitting on private land. It's been constructed by the Shire on private land. So that's been in case, I think, construction started in March last year, and it's been in place since probably May, I think it was constructed. So that's, and if you look at the title that was provided to us once the road reserve was purchased, and there's various properties on that title, all you can see is that strip of land, and you don't see any cul-de-sac, and you see the driveway up there, which is also hasn't been purchased. That's still owned by me and my partner. So I guess one of the main things of the submission was that we support the current position of where the cul-de-sac being turned into a permanent fixture where it is here, and we don't support the extension to A. And I just want to note to everybody that we own the land that's required for 2A extension to extend. It won't happen until it's purchased from myself and Tanya. So 2A extension is really revolved around the landowners that are there at 51 and 50, and myself at lot 308. Now, point 65 in the DCP review states that lot 51 has been purchased by for a place of worship by Hare Krishna religious group, and they want to build a place of worship. I've talked to them. They noted to me that they were planning construction 2022. So as you read down in 65 and 66, the city officers have recommended to wait for any decisions until that construction happens. And really, from our point of view, we have no certainty on what's happening. We've got a cul-de-sac that's constructed on private land. We've got a driveway there which is required for bushfire access for both the temporary roundabout, the proposed extension, and if it gets finalised as a permanent cul-de-sac. Each situation, that driveway is required for emergency access. And we had made the decision when we signed in 2016 to try and relocate, and we're sort of in that process. But we can't continue until we've sorted this out, and the property just has uncertainties on it with this cul-de-sac sitting. Nobody, if you're trying to sell a property and you've got a cul-de-sac there, and they can't develop on that, and they're going to talk to the Shire and say what's happening, and they're going to say, well, it could be 2022, and then we'll have a look at it at 2022. So I've got uncertainty from 2016 to 2023, and I'm looking to sell the property, have it developed, get it turned into industrial, have the whole thing as planned industrial, but I've got uncertainty. And when the Shire talks about certainty for the use of Lot 50, I've got no certainty. So I would like to support Councillor O'Connor's alternate motion to remove the extension 2A from the DCP and have the cul-de-sac sorted out, and everything on my title resolved so that everything's clear and concise. And I've had discussions with the landowners, which are close friends, Christine and Simon Dragizevich. They own lot 50, which is the other landowner, the only other landowner involved with this extension, and they support the same motion as Councillor O'Connor, because they're trying to sell at the moment, and they're getting people coming along and they're saying, we're interested, but there's no, we don't know what's happening with this road, and where we're at the moment, we're looking at 2023. So, you know, we live here. We've lived here for 12 years, so now we're going to be here for 15, waiting to try and sort this out. So, thank you for your time, and thanks for giving me the chance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burney. Councillors, do you have any questions? I've just got one question, Mr. Burney. Did you say that you had spoken to the owners of the Hare Krishna that were going to build the church?
Yes, following the meeting on the 14th, they approached me, and that's my recollection of the discussion, because I was saying to them that, because I knew the basis of that they were waiting for construction, so that they gave me some sort of idea on what they were doing. But they definitely said that they had written to the Shire to say that they did not require any access from that 2A extension, and that they were full speed ahead to get things moving. But there's notes in the submission that I read that say that there's, you know, waiting for funding if parishioners feel that there's certainty, you know, with like the purchase of the bushfire access, which is required for the development to go ahead.
So my question is, how certain, from speaking to them, are you certain that they are going to go ahead, bearing in mind they don't have finance now? Did they make you comfortable that that would happen?
Well, they just said that they were planning, like they had construction drawings or something, and they were planning early 2022. So that's my recollection of the so you probably have to just double check with them, but that's...
Thank you.
But it's just really this was a time when they said the construction might happen, but then we've got a time delay that the Shire was now going to look at turning that cul-de-sac into permanent, so we've got another time delay after that.
I understand that. Councillors, do you have any other questions for Mr. Burney? Thank you very much for coming to speak to us.
Thank you.
Councillors, we now go back to point 6. We've got two...
Madam Chair, if I may, look, I would like to hear from our solicitor. He's here this evening.
When we come to that report,
do you want to wait until then, do you? Okay.
Yes, please, if you wouldn't mind.
He's costing us money being here. So.
I've already deviated from the agenda once. I don't want to do it again. Thank you, Councillor Jardina. So we'll go to point 6, confirmation of minutes. We have 2 lots of minutes. Can I have a mover for the ordinary council meeting minutes held on the 23rd of June? Councillor Ritchie, seconded by Councillor Blair. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. I now confirm these minutes to be a true and accurate record of the proceedings from that meeting. And the second lot of minutes are for the special council meeting held on the 30th of June 2020. And you'll know that there was an amendment to attachment 1 to incorporate the changes as a consequence of the deletion of points D and E. With that amendment in, can I have a mover for those minutes to be accepted? Councillor Giardina, seconded by Councillor Blair. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. On the basis of the above motion, I now sign the minutes as a true and accurate record of the meeting of the 30th of June 2020. Announcements by the member presiding. I have two announcements to make tonight. One of them is we received a very late motion today after 4 o'clock, and I have allowed that to go through, one, to be accommodating, and two, because the process for this motion takes time. However, I urge councillors not to do that. It's really tough when we get motions at the last minute. So if I don't approve it in future, don't be disappointed, and please try not to do that. And the second one, I just want to bring everyone's attention to the right of reply. Lately it's been slipping past that we are going against the Standing Orders local law, which says the right of the reply is to be confined to rebutting arguments raised by previous speakers, and no new matter is to be introduced. So when you have the mover who has a right of reply, you should only be talking about things that came up in the debate, not introducing new material. So if we could please stick to that as well. So matters for which the meeting may be closed, which is item 10.1.2, we will come to that. Let's do 10.1.1 and then we'll close the meeting at the beginning of the next one. So are there any questions for officers regarding the 10.1.1? Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions for the Director, if I may, and I apologise for not sending them through, but they just came to me during the deputations. My first question, taking into consideration point 59 of the report, has the City received any specific DA application in respect to this property which specifies specifically what the land use may be in the future?
Through the Chair, no specific DA has been lodged. The applicants have been working through this structure plan amendment process, but there has been some officer level discussions around potential aged care and associated allied health services, and that has been alluded to this evening from the applicant through their deputation.
Follow-up question, Councillor Boyd.
Thank you. Follow-up question, but on a slightly different tangent. Just wondering if the Director could provide, just wondering, has Cell 9, which is now effectively known as Warrograve North, reached its full residential development potential or capacity?
Through the Chair, no, it has not. There's still a noteworthy number of developments to proceed in the order of 300 to 350 lots. An additional 300 to 350 lots are yet to be developed in Wattle Grove North.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Sewell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions relate to Mr Logan's deputation. Could the Director please explain why an assessment wasn't done in terms of the retail sustainability assessment? I'm not quite clear at this point as to why that didn't occur.
Through the Chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Sewell, and that's a good question. The reason a retail sustainability assessment was not yet undertaken, while the land area identified to be identified under the Cell 9 structure plan is in excess of 3,000 square metres, it is highly unlikely, almost certain, that any retail development on that site would be less than 3,000 square metres and thus not trigger a retail sustainability assessment, because there will be a need for lay-down areas and parking and the like within that 3,000, over 3,000 square metres, I think it's 3,100 square metres, that's shown as commercial. So it's highly unlikely to be over 3,000 square metres, and there's a need for other services to service the development, and the applicant has indicated as part of their submission that it wouldn't be in the order of that magnitude. The Manager for Approval Services may have additional commentary to add to the need for having not provided a retail sustainability assessment as part of the application to amend the structure plan.
Manager?
Yep, through the chair. The policy does allow for exemptions to the requirement for a retail sustainability analysis assessment. From a planning perspective, we felt that what was being proposed here was, I guess, a logical rounding off of the existing commercial area. The amount of floor space that was identified under the retail needs assessment indicated that from my planning perspective, it wasn't considered substantial enough to warrant a retail sustainability assessment. So on that basis, we didn't feel it was necessary. Look, in the event that I think more importantly, when we get the development application for the site and get a better understanding of the amount of retail floor space that's going to be proposed through the development application process, I think we'll be better placed to determine whether we think it's necessary then to have, in addition to the retail needs assessment, a further retail sustainability assessment undertaken.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillors, you have the officer recommendation on page 22. Do I have a mover? Councillor Boyd, and a seconder? Councillor Cannon. Is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. We now move on to item 10.1.2. And councillors, you have a memorandum which makes a slight change in that there are only 4 consumer lines instead of 5. You have a copy of that, so please note that. And I understand that councillors would like to ask a question of Mr. Dennis McLeod. Welcome, Dennis. So to do that, we need to go behind closed doors. Can I have a mover that we go behind closed doors? Moved by Councillor Jardina, seconded by Councillor Sewell. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. So perhaps we could organise that. Councillors, the meeting has reopened. So on page 44 you have the officer recommendation, and you also have an alternative motion from Councillor O'Connor. So I would like to handle it like this. I'm going to ask Councillor O'Connor just to speak on part A only, not part B, and to outline just the difference between the officer recommendation and his motion. I will then put the officer recommendation, and if that does not go through, I'll go to Councillor O'Connor's alternative motion. So, Councillor O'Connor, could you just outline just the difference between the two?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillors, the difference is that stage 2 of Nardine extension from its current temporary location up to lot 50 is the extension is deleted and removed from the DCP, and that the current temporary cul-de-sac is made permanent, and associated land acquisitions take place linked with that. The other is that the Bush Forever fencing is removed, as there's a sufficient fence in place, and that the Nardine Ashby Close intersection upgrade is put back into the DCP.
And just to make that clear, Councillor O'Connor, is this because the owners of the Hare Krishna site will not need Nardine Close because they will access the other road?
That's correct.
Thank you.
They don't need industrial access.
Correct, thank you. So, councillors, you've heard the alternative motion, the differences. I'm now going to the officer recommendation. Is there a mover for that?
Sorry.
Question, Councillor
Just
Ritchie?
have a quick question. If I'm just listening to what we said earlier, if we're adopting the cost contribution rate, does that mean we're actually entering into a fixed rate?
No, it's for this year, for this yearly review.
Right, okay. Just in light of what we've been saying earlier. Thank you.
So do I have a mover for the officer recommendation? That lapses, so let's go to the alternative motion, just part A at this stage. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Boyd. Councillors, it's quite clear to you, we've discussed this at length. Is there going to be any debate?
I have a question.
Yes, Councillor Billich.
Thank you. The rate again is different again. So could the staff please clarify that what is in the Councillor O'Connor's motion is correct, the $20.88? Is that correct?
Through the Chair, Councillor O'Connor has liaised with the administration to ascertain that rate, and that includes the removal of the infrastructure items that he's outlined as part of his alternative motion, and is reflective of that.
Thank you.
Councillors, is there going to be any debate? If not, I'll put the alternative motion part A to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We now go to the alternative motion part B, and I will ask, is there a seconder for this motion? Does everyone have a copy of it? It's regarding Milner and Sultana Road West intersection. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Boyd. I will ask the mover to outline this, please.
Just briefly, it's just to put back into the scheme the RAV4 access.
Right. Seconder, would you like to add anything?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I understand there's going to be a debate, so...
I was just going to ask that. Is there going to be any debate? Yes. Councillors, before we go to the debate, I will ask if you would like questions. Are there any questions? Okay. We've had a mover and a seconder. Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor Cooper.
Madam Chair, just before I
you wish to add more?
So
Yes.
I actually wish to speak to the motion, though.
Oh, sorry, I thought
That's
you
all
were
right.
finished.
It's not even a page. Councillors, it should be recognised that the interaction between light industrial traffic and the new residential precinct will be addressed as the residential precinct develops. There are a range of acceptable options as the to ensure the interaction has minimal to no impact on the residential precinct, such as appropriate building setbacks and landscape buffers. These options will be a consideration for the city, regardless of whether it is a RAV4 route or not, due to the nature of the existing land use to the south, which is light industrial. Apart from an increased intersection truncation, there are no further requirements for a RAV4 vehicle to use this road, to be able to use the road. It is also important to note that a RAV4 vehicle is only at the very maximum 8.5 metres longer than an as-of-right vehicle. We are not talking road trains here, we are talking about a B-double, which is a prime mover, a short lead trailer and a normal semi-trailer behind. To change the goalposts this late in the DCP is completely unfair to the landowners. They have made significant investment decisions based on the land and its associated uses. If we make this change, then I believe we expose the city to the risk of litigation and set a bad precedent as we approach the development of the High Wycombe South DCP. Just because the tenants aren't currently using B-doubles, it doesn't mean that industries such as the mining sector won't have a future need for these vehicles. We have a responsibility to provide a light industrial precinct that is in a prime location with respect to common freight routes and that can respond to changes in the transport and logistics sector. The High Wycombe South residential precinct, as I understand it, has just been approved by the WAPC. The Stage 1 development is nearing its 7th year, with, as the plan shows, less than 3 years to go. We cannot shortchange these landowners who put a lot on the line, who spent a lot of time making sure that the risk of their investment stacked up. Their development is progressing and the residential one will in due course. And when it does, it will accommodate the light industrial traffic that will always be there. Thank you.
I will go back to the seconder. Do you wish to add any comments?
The only comment that I will add, which is more a reiterating what Councillor O'Connor said, is there has been significant investment by many of the landowners in this area, and I don't support making changes at this point in time, so I think we should leave this as it was initially stated in terms of fairness to those landowners that have made that investment. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I support Councillor O'Connell's alternative motion with regards to point A. However, I'm concerned in regard to part B and providing access to restricted access vehicles for the B-doubles to the Milner Road, Sultana Road West intersection and Sultana Road West. Sultana Road West will be the interface between the Forestfield High Wycombe industrial area and the future residential area. I believe that in order to successfully manage the interface between industrial and future residential land uses, Sultana Road West should not be upgraded to accommodate RAV4, but rather remain as of right vehicles which are up to 19 metres that are ordinarily allowed on residential roads. This will most certainly lead to a better outcome with regard to amenity for future residents. It is important to note the City's report indicating that there is no existing need for access for vehicles beyond the as-of-right standard 19-metre semi-trailer and the likely infrastructure cost savings of approximately $38,000 if the intersection and road is not upgraded to restricted access vehicles 4 standard. I've seen firsthand the stress and anxiety suffered by residents living on Adelaide Street in High Wycombe who have been subject to trucks, some of which are not as-of-right vehicles, accessing a recycling facility located at the end of their street. Aside from problems with dust, one of the most important issues to residents has been that of safety, with large trucks travelling on their streets. Planning ahead and ensuring a successful interface between industrial and residential is crucial if we are to prevent such issues in the future, and it is for this reason that I strongly believe that the Milner Road, Sultana Road West intersection and Sultana Road West should remain for as of right vehicles. I would ask councillors to please take into consideration existing and future residents of High Wycombe South and how they will interface with the industrial area, and ensure that the Milner Road, Sultana Road West intersection and Sultana Road West and not be upgraded to accommodate the larger RAV vehicles.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Stello.
Unbelievably for me, I'll be fairly brief. So yeah, so just quickly, if people wish to go back in the history of this one, and it's an amazing thing where we have over time regularly made statements, put out all sorts of motions and things for people in that area, only to have them changed, altered, misinformation gone through. I remember a time in this council where we told people they would get a road to their property, and then we said not going to happen. So there's been too many instances throughout this development where we've said something and done something else, or changed the situation, like changing the goalposts. I think someone moved them last night for the Dockers. So what I think is that if we put no, after we've told them RAV4, if we say no RAV4, I think we're placing restrictions on what people are already planning for the potential of that area as well. I don't see that we shouldn't be doing that, and we've come down. I disagreed with the $17 limit before, and the $20.97 I see per square metre is something that I think is far more acceptable, because it allows us to not only cover the costs but also to be prepared for any contingencies that turn up. So I suppose I would like to finish off by saying that I've seen some of the people who've come in here in tears of frustration, Mr. Downing and people like that, to see the way we have done things in the past. We are now getting it right. We are now fixing it up. I think it's better that we continue on that vein rather than throw another curveball out and therefore give them further angst for their future development and future opportunities. So I think what Councillor O'Connor has put forward is great and fair, and I think we need to go with it. Thank you.
I would like to speak against the motion. Councillors, on one side you have residential, on the other side you have industrial. If you allow trucks, it seems to me like a good compromise. If you allow RAV4s, I think we're just asking for trouble, like in so many other streets in this city where we have trucks 8.5 metres longer than an ordinary truck. That's a lot. So I think a good compromise is just allowing trucks, not RAV4s, and so I don't support the motion. Is there a speaker for the motion?
I'm not for it. I would just like to ask if we could have some comments from the director, please, because I do think a couple of the points that were raised are maybe not quite correct. So could the director please just offer some...
Perhaps you could define which comments you believe are not correct.
Well, for a start, the fact that things have changed constantly, I'm not so sure on that. And also the fact with the residents, the residential area, we have a lot of complaints about the trucks. So therefore, we're going to actually enter into another big problem. So, yeah, if I could please just have some comments regarding upgrading this road.
Thank you, Councillor Billich.
Through the Chair, I'll provide comment on those 2 points. The first being some of the changes. This area has gone through some significant change, be it the Gateway project in terms of upgrading the grade separations throughout the area, providing that RAV access and access to the primary freight route in WA being Roe Highway. Changes in terms of $2 billion train line invested at High Wycombe South, the High Wycombe station. That was a change that occurred after the adoption of the structure plan for the industrial area. That resulted in intersections being reviewed. There was also a comprehensive consultation process undertaken with landowners in 2015, 2016 that resulted in those landowners expressing that the intersections in this area be upgraded to a RAV7, RAV4 standard. That was taken into account as part of DCP reviews. Intersections in the area were reviewed as a result of the station being announced, namely Berkshire Milner Dundas intersection. At one stage that was to be cul-de-saced. Now it is a full movement intersection allowing those RAV vehicles to move. So there has been some change. The area has undergone significant investment. The planning framework went from an industrial area to primarily a residential area, with the existing industrial being at stage 1. So my understanding, Councillor Stallard, was that those were the changes that you were referencing. So I hope that's provided a bit more clarity in regards to some of those statements and what my understanding of Councillor Stallard's comments were. In regards to the land use conflicts are always a difficult thing to manage from a planning perspective and practically. Land use conflicts occur in our rural areas where we have special rural and rural residential properties encroaching on historic agricultural pursuits that are occurring in our hinterland, be it spray drift and the like. Industrial and urban interfaces are always very difficult to manage, and we have a number of those in our city with the City of Swan. We have one of those also just north of this area at Maida Vale and Maida Vale Road and Milner Road. They are always difficult to manage, and there's no one solution. There are a number of things that you can do to mitigate those land use conflicts. There will be opportunities through the detailed design guidelines for the residential precinct to look at appropriate setbacks and the like to Sultana Road and manage that interface between the two areas, irrespective of B doubles or 19.5 semis. A 19.5 semi is a typical Woolworths or Coles truck, just for a practical analogy. That'll need to be mitigated in any case. So whether it's a B double or a 19.5 semi, the design guidelines for Forestfield North, High Wycombe South will need to manage that interface. Depending on the types of vehicles in there, will determine the type of management interface that will have to be provided. So hopefully those comments have given some clarity to some of the statements made.
So we're up to a speaker for the motion.
Sorry, Chair, I have some points of clarity and a question as well. I'm not
Yes,
quite sure
Councillor Sewell, I'll allow that.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that the Director has clarified in terms of what a B double and a road train is. A B double is a significantly large vehicle, can actually go up to 26 metres. I know that's not the case in this scenario, so I just want to clarify point 4. Whilst it's been somewhat understated, a B double vehicle is a significantly large vehicle. I'm also a little bit concerned about point 7 in relation to the Bush Forever site. In terms of fencing of a sufficient standard and quality is already provided, can I seek clarification from our officers that is the case? On what standard and quality are we basing that on, please?
Madam Chair, I think that's been dealt with in a previous
Yes,
motion.
we're actually just dealing with Part B, which is perhaps you could speak to the Director later about that. But we're just dealing with Part B, which is about the Milner Road and Sultana Road West intersection. So is there any other speakers for this motion? I will go back to the mover for a right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will address the issues raised by councillors.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor.
Councillor Cooper talked about the interface management and the planning required to deal with that, and she's absolutely correct. It's worthy to note that the only difference that needs to be dealt with is the truncation of the intersection. The road width is the same, the speeds are the same. Actually, these vehicles travel slower when they are approaching, when they're travelling on skinny roads, but they are the same width roads. So in terms of being worried about the length of the vehicle, it is just the intersection that needs to be upgraded, that's all. The $38,000 that I'm proposing to put back into the DCP will have an impact beyond what the tenants that are using the properties now. Like I said before, if there is a change in the industry and these vehicles become a necessity for whatever reason, those properties are able to support those vehicles. And it's our job to support industry in the metropolitan area. So in no existing need, I've dealt with that. The City of Kalamunda has a role in providing industrial areas. They are critical and valued, and they are part of our city. They are not an unwanted, land use. They are a necessity. Councillor Stellard talked about the stakeholders who got together and unanimously said, yes, we want the RAV network to come in. And I should remind you, council also did the same thing and said, yes, we agree with the stakeholders that we want the RAV network to come in. And the landowners who have paid their contributions have paid for that increased burden. So it's not on the city to pay for. They are wearing that cost. Peter Varela's talked about land use conflicts. Again, they can be easily dealt with setbacks and other road treatments that will be dealt with regardless of whether RAV4 is there or not. So, councillors, I ask you to support this motion and do the right thing by the stakeholders in the scheme who rely on us. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was an excellent rebuttal. Councillors, I'd like to put the motion now, which is part B. All those in favour? Councillor Stallard, Councillor Giardina, Councillor Boyd, Councillor Cannon, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Blair, Councillor Ritchie, and against Councillor Sewell, Councillor Cooper, Councillor O'Donnell, Councillor Billich and Councillor Thomas. The motion is carried. Thank you. Councillors, you'll note that 10.2.1 has been withdrawn. So we move on to item 10.2.2. Is there a problem? I notice Mr. McLeod is leaving. Thank you very much for assisting us tonight. So, councillors, you all are aware that you need to be careful which questions you ask in an open meeting regarding tenders. So, are there any questions that you can ask on 10.2.2? No? The officer recommendation is on page 50. Do I have a mover? Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.4.1, Community Sporting and Recreation Facility. Are there any questions, councillors? The officer recommendation is on page 58. Do I have a mover? Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Ritchie. Is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.5, the Audit and Risk Committee recommendations. We're going to move them on block unless a councillor wishes to pull something out. If not, I'll ask for a mover for the officer recommendation on the top of page 59. Do I have a mover? Councillor Blair, seconded by Councillor O'Donnell. Is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We move on to 10.6.1, the draft monthly financial statements. Are there any questions? The officer recommendation is on page 69. I'm happy to move this myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Stallard, is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 10.6.2, councillors, you have some questions raised by Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Boyd and Councillor O'Connor, and I thank those councillors for doing that beforehand and giving the officers a chance to put them in writing and share them with all of us. Are there any other questions? The officer recommendation is on page 76. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ritchie, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 10.6.3, rates debtors report. Are there any questions? Is there a mover for the officer recommendation on page 82? Councillor Boyd, seconded by Councillor Blair. Is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 10.6.4. Are there any questions regarding Kalamunda achieving corporate business plan? If not, I'll ask for a mover. Question, Councillor O'Connor?
Yes. My question is to the Director for Planning. Can the Director update us on the development of the local planning scheme review?
Through the Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor O'Connor. The City, over the past few years, has progressively been working through a number of sub-strategies to feed into a new local planning strategy. They are the Public Open Space Strategy, Industrial Development Strategy and the like. They have all progressed significantly with the Activity Centre Strategy and Local Housing Strategy, which are significant components just recently coming off public advertising. So the City has resourced appropriately internally and is working towards the preparation of its new local planning strategy and local planning scheme concurrently. That would be local planning scheme number 4 and the latest local planning strategy. They are progressing well. We've had detailed project plans prepared and we're just embarking on the process of preparing that. It will take a number of years to work through that process, including approval from the Planning Commission and ultimately the Minister, but we're well placed, having worked through the detail of those various sub-strategies and providing those various elements of the local planning strategy the time and the energy that each deserve and warrant, so that we have a solid set of strategies and actions to work through to inform the new local planning scheme and local planning strategy.
Are there any other questions? Is there a mover for the officer recommendation on page 85, Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Stallard? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Application for leave. Chief Executive Officer, do you have to disclose an interest in this? Not for leave. Thank you. So are we going to give the CEO leave? Can I have a mover for the officer recommendation on page 88? Moved Councillor Blair, seconded Councillor Sewell. I'm not going to ask if there's going to be any debate. I'll just put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.6.6. Are there any questions about the Black Spot program submissions?
Yes, if I may.
Can I have a mover? Oh,
I had a question.
A question, Councillor Stallard.
Yes, thank you. Having a look at this one here, I saw that one of the black spots was the Court of Railway Road and Elizabeth Street, and I saw the recommendation was that, or the thought was that it could be a roundabout. I was just trying to get my head around the concept that the costing for a roundabout at that location was $740,000, and I'm just trying to comprehend what does it entail and why would it potentially cost that much?
Could we have an answer to that, Director of Asset Services?
Thank you. Through the Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Stallard. If I may, bear with me and I'll dig up the cost plan for the roundabout, noting that they themselves are not cheap pieces of work. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sorry, I've just responded to Councillor Stallard's question. So the cost plan for that roundabout comprises approximately $38,000 of design and overheads and project management. Service relocations are important in this intersection. We do have some underground services that have to be removed and moved, and they are $350,000 of the equation. The roundabout construction itself would be in the order of predominantly about 290 of the balance.
A follow-up question.
Follow-up question, Councillor Stallard.
Is there also a component to purchase any land? I thought we would need to go into one of the properties there or a couple of the properties for area.
Bear with me again, I'll just get the sketch plan.
My apologies
which has
for
been
not
attached to the report.
asking this question in advance, so sorry.
That's all right. No, look, this is, a topical matter at the best of times, this intersection. Okay. Thank you. Through the chair. The extent of works will be contained within the road reserve, so we don't have to procure private land. We do have to obviously take out some of the area of the verge at the moment that isn't currently road to create the thickness for the annulus for the roundabout.
Councillors, are there any other questions? Councillor Sewell.
I actually did some research in relation to this particular intersection, and I note that in 2017, according to Google Maps Street View, it was actually a stop sign at this intersection, and subsequently was changed to a give way sign. I'm wondering whether the increase in accidents at this particular location is in direct result of those changes, and why those changes were made. So why it was changed from a stop sign back in 2017 to a give way sign.
Director.
Yep. Thank you. Through the chair. The city was successful several years ago in getting some small amount of black spot funding to undertake some traffic calming measures at that intersection of Railway and Elizabeth. When we went for mandatory lines and signs approval for main roads, their standards and regulations and guidelines had changed, requiring us to pull out the stop signs and put the giveways back. We did ask to them to review that decision, and they refused, despite several requests. So that's why we reverted back to the giveways. Our traffic people, because I actually had asked them that very same question, thank you for having the same sort of wavelength, they did say, look, unfortunately, there's not enough clear analysis that signage change has contributed to extra accidents or not. So we couldn't make that supposition. But the issue is now, with the way that the black spot program is structured, you have 5 years data to rely upon to get your benefit cost ratio, and this project clearly exceeds the Commonwealth guidelines for black spot funding well and truly. So we're showing that there is significant benefit even at that cost in crash mitigation.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Blair.
Just a quick follow-up on Councillor Sewell's question. It's early in time, but as you know, I've taken quite an interest in that intersection. And I just would like to ask a question on the shape of that roundabout. Would they be recommending it be matching to the roundabout that's 15 metres up the road, a sort of egg shape rather than a circular roundabout, so it works in parallel?
Thank you for that question. Through the chair, at this moment it's a conventional circular donut arrangement. As we get through detailed design, we'll consider if we need to elongate any of the legs accordingly.
Are there any other questions? Do I have a mover for the officer recommendation on page 97? Councillor Blair, seconded by Councillor Sewell. Is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.6.7, is there a disclosure of interest for this item?
I'd like to declare an interest in this 10.67. It relates to my employment with the city, so it's a direct financial. So I'll be leaving the room unless council require me to answer any questions.
Does
I'm happy
councillor...
to move, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move the...
Yeah. Are there any questions you'd like to ask the CEO before she leaves the room? No? Thank you. Councillors, we have a mover. The officer recommendation on page 101. We'll just wait till the directors leave the room. Councillor, we have a mover, Councillor Giardina, seconded by Councillor Connor. Is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Could somebody ask everybody to come back? Just to let you know, that motion was carried unanimously. 11.1. Oh, sorry, I missed that. Did you wish to vote against it? Oh, no, I missed you. So if I miss somebody, please call out. Thank you. We move to motions of which previous notice has been given. So 11.1, the CAT local law. I will ask the mover just to quickly outline this motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's quite self-explanatory. It's just seeking the CEO prepare a report to bring back to council in regards to introducing a local CAT law in regards to CAT ownership and regulations within the city, primarily in response to a fair amount of discussion within the community in regards to CAT's responsible ownership, CAT's interfacing with neighbours, and also around protection of some of our fauna and the destruction that's currently happening around the place.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon, do you wish to add anything as the seconder?
Yeah, it's just also like if you have a dog, you have to, look after that dog and make sure that dog's not doing the wrong thing, or keep it on a lead at all times. So just trying to find maybe possibly a new direction that we can take, that we could possibly do something. We have we have an area across the road from the schools. There's a lot of spraying and fighting and things going on in there. So, yeah, cats, not the kids. The kids are doing the day. So I do follow that motion.
Thanks. Do you have a question, Councillor Sewell?
Thank you, Chair. I do. I appreciate Councillor Boyd and Councillor Cannon raising this. I remember when we discussed the dog law at one of the strategy planning meetings, we had a specific request of James Wickens was to actually come back with some information, was my understanding, pertaining specifically to the CAT law. So I appreciate that it has been escalated so rapidly. I just wanted to confirm that that information would still be coming back as what came previously out of that meeting.
Who would like to take that?
Through the chair, the CAT local law, details on the CAT local law will be provided as part of this report. In terms of the information request that you'd asked for, we can provide some information in the interim if you'd like. No problems. I was actually on annual leave when that occurred, so I can't give you any comment on what was asked of at that particular meeting. But as in terms of this motion that's been put forward, the city will report back by December. And if you have any queries in the interim, more than happy to take those as any other usual council requests via email or through council support officer.
Councillor Ritchie, you have a question?
Thank you. As a very naughty cat owner who has just registered and microchipped and sterilised and has a cat wearing a collar, etc., I'm just wondering if I could get the number of registered cats and so on that we do have in the city that are compliant with those requirements that we currently have, please?
Through the chair, I'll have to take that on notice.
No, that's fine. I wasn't expecting you to know.
Councillor O'Donnell, did you have a question?
I just have three. Okay. Oops. Now I forgot what they were. How many reports does the CEO have to prepare by the end of this year? I'm just curious. How many reports to council?
Can I take that on notice, please, councillor,
okay.
and I'll get back to you. I'll have to go back and look at some records with my staff.
The other question is also about, I guess I understand that the matters are not including, it's not an exhaustive list, but I would hope that community engagement and cat trapping will also be included as part of that.
Yes, we'll take that on board. Thank you.
And I could also question if you could potentially speak to the City of Coburn. Councillor Phoebe Cork has done an outstanding job in terms of, obviously it's a very different City of Coburn, but they have done quite comprehensive research on the cat regulations and has got some very interesting regulations, so I would suggest them.
Yes,
first.
we'll definitely be benchmarking, see what others are doing, and we'll definitely put Coburn in the mix. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Is there going to be any debate, councillors? You wish to add something, Councillor Boyd?
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair, just in respect to one of Councillor O'Donnell's queries, may I say possibly a concern, with respect to the timing of this, I did have discussions with the Director of Development Services around the timing and what would be required to develop this report, and the timing was suggested by the Director, and he perceives that that's feasible. The December date is feasible and practical for this report, and dare say it was the Director's discretion to put that date in rather than myself. So I'm assuming that that doesn't provide an onerous amount of work or over onerous amount of work on the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. I'll put the motion on page 102. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Now 11.2. I'm moving this motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sewell, I understand you wish to second this motion. Thank you. Councillors, this came about because a few people have been saying to me what's happening about the public electing the mayor. So it is out in the community already. I think it's been on people's Facebook pages. And the other thing that happened is I've met up with a couple of mayors who are directly elected, and they have told me that it is such a great thing in that the community own it and it's very popular. So I don't know where we are in the city of Kalamunda, but I don't think we can ignore it because it's out there. And this motion just asks for us to go out and consult and see what the community want. It's not asking us to change what we're doing, it's just asking us for a consultation. The rest of my points are outlined there. I won't read them out. I'm sure you've had a look at them. And I urge you to support this motion, and let's see what our community want before we make a decision. Councillor Sewell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly through my experience in being elected as a councillor, and I think it is worthwhile that the leader of this council, our mayor, does have the support of the community. I don't know where the community stands on this particular issue, and I think it's really important that we are guided by the community on this, which is why I'm supporting this motion.
Is there a speaker, a question,
I have a
Councillor
question,
Ritchie?
actually. I'm not against the motion. I just, in casual conversations, I'm a little concerned about not so much putting it out to consultation, but, and I assume the CEO would take this into account, about, if you like, a for and against, almost like a scenario like that, because clearly there are significant financial implications of this if we go to 13 councillors, etc. So I just would hope that the consultation is not just whether you want to elect a mayor, because to be honest, before I came on to council, it was a very simple answer, and it's what I would have thought of. I'm probably thinking I'm still caught in that dilemma. So I'm just hoping that when the consultation goes out, it's pretty clear what those fors and against would actually be. Not that they're voting, but that there be some significant financial implication, what the advantages and supposedly, because I think just people glibly ask would say yes, but I just feel there needs to be some level of significant implications for that.
Any other questions? Councillor Giardina?
Madam Chair, it's not really a question. It's
Can
probably
you try and turn it into a question?
more of a comment that I wish to make. I support the notion of going out for public comment. I will always do that. I've had some queries over the years. That's why I haven't supported, or I haven't actually moved the motion to this effect. The area that I would be very concerned with is where a 4-year term for a mayor. If you get a lemon as a mayor, if he's still there for 4 years, he or she, you can't get rid of them. Currently, as it is at the moment, if council elects them, they're here for 2 and they can change them. And C, a popular elected mayor being somewhat independent could be better focus on building a high-performing council without fear or favour. There's politics will definitely come into it, where political parties and people of that ilk will probably get involved, and where I don't think they do at the moment. So there's fors and against, and I think that probably, these type of things need to be spelt out when we go out for the consultation. We need to give people that information. It's not straight out to me. Do you want a mayor elected by the people or not? I think we need to give those the fors and against to have a clear view on how we on how people, when people do vote, they'll have a better idea.
Perhaps we could just come back to the motion and do it so...
I'm happy to proceed with a public consultation.
So I'm asking for a speaker against the motion.
Chair, I'd like to propose an amendment.
Yes.
My amendment is to give effect that makes it clear, or actually what it does is says that the community consultation for consideration and approval by council prior to ascertaining the community support for, and so on. So essentially what it does is the council approves the consultation method and material, which is in line with recent practices.
Yep, good idea. I'm happy to second that.
Would somebody comment on that and give us a bit more information?
Well,
through the chair, all this will do is just delay the commencement of the consultation until we put the comms plan together and come back to council for it to approve that comms plan, that's all.
I don't support that. I just think it's very clear. We just go out, we say that it would add another person, etc., and we go and see what the public want. And when they come back with comments, then we'll know.
so Madam Chair, you're not accepting that amendment?
No.
Right, so I would like to move that.
Sorry, can I just clarify, councillor? You're just asking to have a look at the survey like we normally do, aren't you? We all always bring back the surveys like for checking.
The material prior to going out.
Yeah, which will be a survey.
And approved by council.
Well, we'll bring it back for you to have a look at like we do with all of our surveys that go out, and you can have a look and give any feedback. Wasn't proposing to bring it back through a council meeting because we don't do that, but generally, like tonight, we handed out a survey tonight for you to have a look at, give us any feedback, and then we let them go. So that would be the process that we would be proposing.
I would be supportive of that.
Thank you. I'd still like to move my amendment and have that debated, please.
So your amendment is?
So the amendment is, after the words in your motion, after the word consideration, it should also add and approval. And approval by council prior to ascertaining consideration and approval by council prior to ascertaining. No, that's right. That's correct. Just ascertaining.
We're just drafting up Dylan's amendment, and then the mayor will ask if you and the mayor support it or not, otherwise it'll go to debate.
Can I just ask what's the difference between that and what we normally do when we just bring a survey out and say, what do you think about this and what?
Well, it's having to come back to council as a report for you guys to approve rather than just having a look at it and giving feedback. That's the difference.
So is that going to make it to, is there time to do that? I don't know, I understood that. So there's time to do that? No, I understood there's a process and it's...
It depends on how long the staff take to do the research, put the survey together, and when the next ordinary council meeting will fall. So we might be able to get it back in a month, or I might get it back the following month.
If it's the following month, is there time for the process?
Where are we up to? And we can call a special meeting when it's ready.
That's correct. Yep. So can I speak to it, Madam Mayor?
Well, it comes back to the mover to accept that, and I accept... No, it doesn't.
We're voting on the amendment to insert this into...
Okay.
You already did accept it. You've been through that process.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't have the wording when I didn't accept it.
Now go and say, I'd accept it now because I understand it better.
I accept it now because I understand it better. Councillor Sewell, as the seconder, do you accept it? Sorry, Councillor Sewell?
Sorry, can you just highlight where, because I'm not clear on it, please, if you could just highlight where I'm reading, please.
So it's there, yeah, now it's there.
So the council requests, could you please repeat it back and then can you just...
So the council requests the Chief Executive Officer to develop a comprehensive community consultation for consideration and approval by council prior to ascertaining the community support.
Yeah.
You happy with that?
I'm happy with that, thanks.
Okay. So you happy with that process now, Councillor O'Connor?
Delighted, thank you.
I'm glad you're delighted. Is there a speaker against the motion?
Can I offer that I have a question which may, subject to the answer then, put me in a position where I will talk against the motion. I suppose what I would be asking, is it going to have in this presentation to the community arguments for and against? If not, I feel it should, but if it isn't, then I would speak against the motion.
Through the chair, we will be putting our pros and cons in there. They won't be subjective, they'll be basically what we can see. They have to be fairly factual, so we will have to think about what those pros and cons look like, but there will be pros and cons.
And also it needs to be approved by council, so you'll see it.
And we can debate it at that stage?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Councillor O'Donnell, you have a question?
Thank you. I guess my question is surrounding what would be the ward boundary and mayoral review that is required to be done every 5 years, which I believe, if I'm correct, should actually be 2021. Is that correct?
Councillor O'Donnell, can you repeat that question? I don't think they were listening.
No, that's all right. No one listens to me. The question was that the boundary ward review of council and the discussion about publicly elected mayor is generally required to be held every 5 years, which I believe would be actually 2021. Is that correct? It's 8 years. Okay, right. So in a sense, we're 5 years into doing half of a process. I just wondered if there is merit, given what we have coming next in the agenda, to consider whether or not there is merit in doing that. And I guess my question is also about, we've highlighted the mayor and 12 councillors. I think that we should not go out with an expectation that we should have a mayor and 12 councillors. Why can't we have 11 councillors and a mayor? Why can't we have 10 councillors and a mayor? The Act doesn't actually prescribe the amount of councillors. It has to be between 5 and 15, if I believe my reading of the Act is correct. So I just wonder if we can just keep it open-minded when we go out to the community, that it can be the mayor and X amount of councillors, as opposed to us putting the expectation.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Councillor Boyd?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, obviously we do these quite frequently. I'm just wondering what the cost of these community consultations are and the associated work around them.
Can I ask the Manager of Customer and PR if you've got any idea of costs that it costs to do this?
Very much for the question, Councillor Boyd. I could answer with how long is a piece of string, but I won't. It really does depend on what is decided to be a part of what is currently termed as a comprehensive community consultation. So the City of Kalamunda has a number of current engagement mechanisms at its disposal that we regularly use for consultation, in which the consultation costs to the city, so any additional costs are relatively minimal. They might include officer time, they might include adverts in the local paper, for example, specific to that topic, but in all other areas we will look wherever we can to utilise mechanisms that are already paid for and operational. So notices, the engagement portal, the website, you know, pop-ins at community sessions where we've already got something happening. I will need to have further discussions with exec in terms of what is deemed to be a comprehensive community consultation. Are we looking for a valid sample size, for example, to ensure a certain number of responses from within the City of Kalamunda? Is there a feel that some of the data from 2015, in which some questions were asked in relation to this, will be utilised and will be part of that perhaps secondary analysis on this matter? So it is difficult, but I would be suggesting it would be in the vicinity of $2,000 to $5,000.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Ritchie?
Yeah, just if, given the significance of this and the interest in it, and also the concern at times from some of our residents that they're not on either the internet or Facebook, what would be the cost of posting it out, given it's such a fundamental change to the way we do our business?
The cost to post is significant, and obviously to post via Australia Post, we have had some discussions recently in relation to the cost to post rates. Ultimately, it's approximately $1 a letter if you wish to post via Australia Post. I must say my recommendation, most likely, keeping in mind that this is something that hasn't been decided as yet, so we haven't done the body of work, would probably not be to post via Australia Post unless there was something already going out to residents via that mechanism. We do have other alternates such as using IVES. Some of you will have heard of them as being CellMats, so that's kind of letterbox style delivery in which the cost is about $55 per 1,000 households in terms of reaching letterboxes with hard copies. That is something that we have chosen to do. It doesn't reach every single household, and we're constantly aware of that, and it's why we look for a number of different mechanisms, and we use integrated marketing and communications to try and say, hey, if you didn't get it in your letterbox, please let us know, give us a call. We've had cases where we've put out to residents, give us a call and we will send you one should you not receive it for any other reason, or pick it up from your library. We've got them available at admin. So we need to look at multiple ways to reach residents. I must say that where issues are controversial, we do find a higher take-up of responses.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Cannon.
Sorry, through the chair, I just wanted to ask, with the current environment that we're in, and we were quoted, was it $2,000 to $5,000 in spending, plus postage that we just spoke about. Also, with all the comments that we're seeing on our social media pages, what's the rush and the big change for this to happen suddenly? Should we be just sitting back and focusing on more important things for the community at this moment?
Who's going to answer that?
Madam Mayor, you should probably answer that. It's your motion.
It's your motion, you'll have to answer that.
Sorry, can you ask the question again?
What's the rush? And also talking about all the spendings with the...
Why am I doing this?
Why is it being done now in such a
Only
rush?
because people have started asking me. Since I've been the mayor, quite a few people have started asking me. It's out there, people are talking about it. That's the only reason.
Madam Chair, if I may add to that there have been councillors now for 3 or 4 years that have put it on their brochures that they would support a directly elected mayor, popularly elected mayor.
And it's been on Facebook pages of councillors.
It's been out there now for a number of years, but they haven't actually moved any motions to that effect. So, you know, good on you for doing it.
Yeah.
And let's bring it out in the open. And put your money where your mouth is.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Bring it out in the open. It's being talked about, and then people will say, "Oh, you know, you don't care what the community think," and I don't want that to happen. Councillor Saw, did you want to add something?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just in terms of some of the points that were raised by councillors this evening, I think sometimes a 2-year term is actually too minimalistic for major changes or impacts.
Are we in debate? Sorry. Are we debating or ask a question?
Yeah. Well, it has been debated.
Madam Chair, I've been speaking.
Okay. Okay, so do we have a mover against the motion? Councillor O'Connor?
I've only got 2 pages, so it's...
So you're speaking against the motion that you amended?
Correct. And the reason being, if I lost this motion, then at least the council has oversight. So to answer that question. Madam Mayor, since the agenda came out last Thursday evening, I learned of this motion. I've canvassed a number of residents and colleagues, many of whom hold the view that only the councillors truly know how someone operates on council, and that councillors are the best judge, best placed to choose their leader every 2 years. Other comments were made that the 2-year term keeps the leader accountable, and that 4 years of a dud leader could be catastrophic for our community.
Point of order, Councillor O'Connor. Are you talking about whether we do it, or are you talking about whether we go to consultation?
Whether we go to consultation.
Okay, thank you.
But what came through strongly, the most consistent theme, was the question why, and why now? And I honestly couldn't answer those questions or respond to those comments.
So when I think of the reasons any significant change is put forward and made, I wonder what problem are we trying to fix? And as I see it, there is no problem. And I would ask then why are we going to make the change or proposing to talk about making the change? The rationale talks about the need to move away from the discussions councillors hold every 2 years about who should be the mayor, the leader of the council. And I don't see a problem with those discussions at all. I think they are entirely appropriate. In fact, it would be expected of us as councillors to give that big, important decision the focus of energy and discussion that it deserves. The same discussions, in fact, that the current mayor took part in last October, as we all did. In your rationale, Madam Mayor, you stated that the benefit would be 4 years of consistent leadership. My question is, what if that leadership is flawed? What if that leadership let the city of Kalamunda down? What if it let the council and the ratepayers down? Do we want a consistent but poor leader? It has happened in the past, make no mistake. The 2-year term has been a very effective way of ensuring a high standard of leadership. No one holds the leader to account more than the council who appointed them. And if they don't perform to the standard we expect, they get tossed out. To consider making a change from a tried and tested method, a system that is proven to work, to one where there is absolutely no accountability from anyone. And you've got that for 4 years. Think of the damage that could be done in that time, reputational damage and lost opportunities, which ultimately affects our residents. The future prosperity of this city and its residents should not be held in the hands of one individual, with no recourse to address poor performance. Not from councillors, not from the administration, not from the department, and most importantly, not from the residents and ratepayers. Votes of no confidence have no status. They have no meaning.
I agree, Councillor O'Connor.
Sorry,
You're not debating whether we go to consultation. You're debating whether we have a publicly elected mayor or a council elected mayor. That's not what this motion is. This motion is just that we go to community consultation. So could you bring your debate back to that, not the pros and cons of...
Well, Madam Mayor, I'm speaking to the reasons why we shouldn't go out, because it's very easy to get this ball rolling and to think, well, yes, this is being democratic and of course we should get everyone should have their say and everyone should have their vote and everything else. But the implications, it's very easy to make this move. It's very hard to pare it back. So if in the event that we go down this path and we start the ball rolling, it's very hard to go back to a council appointed mayor.
And now you're debating the motion. Well done.
So I was getting to that, but I was taking the long road. But I'll slim it down a little bit. I won't talk about the beauty of our award system because we all know why that works and how it makes representing your community achievable for people of different socioeconomic backgrounds. Another consideration is I'm reluctant to have the political persuasion, as Councillor Jardina alluded to. I'm very proud of the fact that this council, while there is a range of political persuasions in the room, the party political divide has not set in yet. And I've seen it on other councils, and it is a rot. I firmly believe and trust each member votes on his or her beliefs, and sometimes they align with the party, but no councillors owe anyone, and they are not beholden to anyone, which is why I think that this is where the integrity of this council is on its finest display. The reasons why we shouldn't go out for public comment on this, I recall a comment being made that it appeared on Facebook and another candidate raised it during her campaign. And so that is the way these things should be brought on. Because a candidate raised it or that it was seen on a Facebook post. That doesn't seem to be the way a council should determine its agenda, by what's on Facebook. If Facebook was relied on to set the agenda, we would have a new aquatic centre in every suburb, bird collections would be back, the staff would work for half the pay, if they even got paid at all, and there would be a new police station on every street corner. Councillors, this idea in my view, should be stopped in its tracks tonight. Any issue the Mayor perceives to exist should be brought to light and dealt with. I encourage you to reject this item, and let's get on with being a high-performing, robust council that serves its residents.
A speaker for the motion, Councillor Billich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I remember correctly, the last time the Kalamunda Council considered changing to a popularly elected mayor was in November 2000. Now, that was following a presentation of a petition that was signed by over 1,800 residents. At that time, and by a one-vote margin, a majority of councillors opposed the proposal for a popularly elected mayor. A system of popularly electing our future mayor is not only more democratic, it circumvents the possibility of councillors doing backroom deals that advantage themselves at the expense of electing a mayor who is the best suited to the position. A popularly elected mayor would also be a beneficial counterbalance against ward parochialism, meaning the tendency of councillors to always consider their pet projects as the most worthy of budget funding. I think this just keeps going around and around and around. It's a conversation that just never stops, and I think that it needs to go out to the community. But at the same time, if the community response is overwhelming, if it is that they say they would like a popularly elected mayor, then this council has no right to then refuse that. So this is what happened before. So we need to make sure that if we're going to put it out to the community, we need to take heed of what the community response is going to be, because we cannot turn around then and just go against what they're saying the next time around. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Billich. A speaker against the motion, Councillor Boyd.
Thank you.
And could speakers make sure they're talking to the motion, which is about consultation, not whether we have a directly elected mayor or council elected mayor.
Yeah, and no doubt I'll be probably have some shakes of heads, but I'm referencing some of the rationale which was put in the motion, so that's what I'm reflecting on. So I was somewhat surprised to see this motion slipped onto the agenda, as I'd recalled some mention about a discussion to take place at a strategy session. Nonetheless, I've managed to speak with residents across our community seeking their viewpoint, and for the most part the feedback I've received is generally only councillors know how councillors operate and who may be more suited to be the mayor or the councillor representative. There was a concern raised relating to it could be the size of one's chequebook that would ultimately dictate who becomes mayor. There is of course the argument that new councillors don't have the knowledge. However, one would expect anyone nominating for council would have taken interest in the machinations for a period leading up to an election. I did of course receive feedback in support of a popular elected mayor, citing using the current process residents are faced with when electing councillors as a way of deciding who to vote for. An example, and I quote, "In our area, you are known as a hard-working councillor, so you would be well supported by a tight-knit community. While flattering, running for mayor isn't on my radar, and now we're in the near future." I've also taken time to speak with councillors from some of our neighbouring cities who, like Kalamunda, currently elect their mayor by council. I inquired if and when a popular elected mayor was last considered, and if it was currently being discussed, and reasons why or why not. The responses varied to being last considered 3 to 4 years ago, out to 10 years ago, and none of them considering or reconsidering this at the moment. And previous considerations were overwhelmingly rejected. The reasons why they were considered at the time included an attempt to correct poor mayoral leadership, and I'm pretty sure that's not what we're trying to resolve here in Kalamunda. It was also raised with me something other councillors have equated to, and other matters raised in chambers is no other EMRC councils have a popular elected mayor. Some have considered it but ultimately rejected the notion. Some other interesting points have also been raised. Who is most likely to know mayoral candidates? The 60,000 electors, of which about 25% vote, or the 12 councillors, of which 100%, we almost had 100% at our last October, vote. Ultimately, councillors have to work with the mayor for 2 years, so it should be council who chooses that person who's a presiding councillor. I note the City of Coburn was listed as an example of a city using the popular elected mayor system. They had a unique situation electing a mayor who had never been a councillor. I wonder if that is the intent of this motion, to seek electing a mayor who comes from our communities, totally independent of council of the day. An interesting proposition, if that is, in fact, what we're seeking to try and do. I've also taken time to look at the other progressive councils mentioned in the rationale. While our city has a population of approximately 60,000, the majority of those listed in the rationale are cities which have well over 100,000 residents. In fact, Wanneroo and Stirling have well over 200,000 residents. I'm not sure if there's an appropriate comparison to be drawn. I'm sure the mayor, in doing her research, also found that when the City of Stirling introduced the popular elected mayor system, their voting turnout actually was reduced. They had more residents turn out for the referendum than the actual elections. Probably the most salient comment made to me regarding popular elected mayors was having a look at the City of Stirling, the City of South Perth, also noted in the rationale, and the City of Perth, both having popular elected mayors and both having significant issues, which we all know ended very badly for both cities. Not a path I'd like to see the City of Kalamunda head down. And just to add on a point just raised about 1,800 residents making submissions or claims in support, I used the calculation of 2,000, I'd make a rough calculation, so maybe you had 40,000 residents at that stage. That's 4.5% of the city population that maybe voted on that at best. So I'm not sure that's a adequate representation of the city. So I don't support this motion.
Is there a speaker for the motion?
I'm just wondering if I could foreshadow, and I don't know, I'm not sort of too on this, but whether we should actually look at deferring this. It just seems to be such division. I'm just wondering whether we can defer the motion.
I don't see that deferring it will make any difference. Is there any speaker? You've already spoken, Councillor Sewell.
I will speak for it, Madam Chair, but I've told you why I would support it. My main... Sorry?
He sort of has spoken, but when he shouldn't have. So be brief, please, Councillor Giardina.
Do you wish to speak, Councillor? Do you want to speak? Okay. Look, if you want to speak, I'm happy to let you speak.
Hang on, I'm going to let you speak, Councillor Sewell, because it was a bit messy and that's totally my fault. So if you want to be brief, you may speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, my distress was that there seemed to be some councillors who were given the privilege of making numerous comments, and I just wanted to speak in response to those. So I'll go back to my original point, which was a 2-year term is probably an inadequate time frame in terms of having any real influence.
Could you please keep it to the consultation bit?
Yeah, my concern around that is that many other councillors have expanded it outside of that and they have not been brought to point on that.
I've been trying to.
Okay, I'll just withdraw. Thank you.
Councillor Giardina. Sorry, I'll just go to a speaker against. You speaking against the motion, Councillor O'Donnell? No. Do you want to speak against the motion? You're speaking against the motion?
Mine will be short and sweet. I don't find we have a problem with our mayor. It's all good regarding, I don't think this consultation should go out. Basically, this is just a paraphrase. It's better the devil you know than the one you don't know.
I love that brief. Thank you, Councillor Cannon. Councillor Giardina, who's also going to be brief.
Look, Madam Chair, I think we just put it to the vote. I've said I'm supporting it, and
Okay.
I gave the reasons why, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't have an issue with public consultation, whichever way it goes.
Yep.
I'm happy.
Councillor Ritchie.
Initially, I did support the motion, but now upon reflection, my concern for the public consultation is if that vote is strongly in favour of it, we are painted into a corner. And all of the reasons that we might come up with for not doing that, we almost are going to be tarred with that. Now, it may be good or it's bad, but that's my concern, that we should resolve it as councillors first before we go out to consultation, and then at least we've got a majority of councillors on side, rather than go to consultation first. And if it's overwhelmingly for, we are almost painted into a corner.
Thank you for speaking on the actual motion. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor O'Donnell for the motion.
Well, I don't know if I'm speaking for or against, I'm losing track, but I figure just about everybody's had their say, so why not? Lots of conversations about what people think and what they don't think. I think we've done far more consultation about a whole bunch of issues, and all we're doing is putting out conversation to the community, and I really don't think it's that big an issue. We don't necessarily have to do this for the next election. We don't have to do this then, there and now. We can do it in 2 years if we want to decide that this is not going to become an issue. I actually got elected and I knew nothing about council. I never voted. I didn't know anything. I just wanted to make a difference. I haven't voted for any of bar one. So I'm not a very good judge of character, obviously. And, you know, it would be nice once in a while when people criticise our mayors and things to say, well, actually, you know, you're the one that actually voted for that person. So, you know, just like the rest of us that we get lumped in, oh, we're going to get rid of you next time, maybe we can put that back to the community. I don't know. Maybe the community will say no. I don't know. But I don't fear asking a question, regardless of what I think about if we should or should not elect the mayor by ourselves or with the community.
Okay, I'll just give a brief rebuttal. So one thing I'm puzzled about is two of the speakers tonight said that they went out to their ratepayers who were overwhelmingly against a directly elected mayor. So if that's the case, community consultation will bring that forward and then we will know. This motion is only about asking the community, and it came about only because I don't know how to answer this. What happened to allowing the community to elect the mayor? And they are the questions that I've been asked several times, and that's why I brought this up. I think if you think ratepayers don't like it, well then community consultation will be good for you and will be really clear. I think it's already out there and I don't know how to answer that question, so let's just ask the community what they think and go from there. So we've all had our say. Let's put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Stallard, Councillor Giardina, Councillor Sewell, Councillor Cooper, Councillor O'Donnell, Councillor Billich, Councillor Blair, Councillor Thomas. Against? Councillor Boyd, Councillor Cannon, Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Ritchie. The motion is carried. Move on to questions by members without notice. Councillors, do you have any questions? Good. Councillor O'Connor. I'll just remind you of the time, Councillor O'Connor.
Yep. Could the Director of Planning provide any updates on the residential local structure plan for the people in High Wycombe South?
Through the Chair, thank you for your question, Councillor O'Connor. The City has received official correspondence from the West Australian Planning Commission advising that the local structure plan for the residential precinct has been approved. That information will be conveyed in the next monthly newsletter to those that have subscribed to that information.
I remembered what it was, Madam
Councillor Giardina.
We've all received a petition of late from the Probus Club regarding some of the concerns that they have, or one person there, an engineer, has, and they've brought it to the attention of the Probus Club. They've had petitions and they've sent it through to us. Can we, where do we go from here? Are we going to be responding to them? Are we going to get this individual in? Brett, if you can give us some indication of what we're going to do.
Thank you, through the Chair, and thank you, Councillor Giardina, for that question. My full intention is to respond with a council report to that petition, outlining the concerns and responses to the issues raised by Probus, and provide that as soon as possible we can get the report prepared.
Councillor Sewell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to direct the question through the Chair to the Director of Development Services. Can we please have a status update on Stirk Park and the skate park as well, please?
Oh, through the Chair, I'll take that one. That's in my directorate. You'll be getting a presentation next Tuesday on the skate park from the consultant.
Any other questions? So we move on to questions by members of which due notice has been given. There are none. Urgent business approved by the presiding member. We have two motions. The first one is 14.1. Does everyone have a copy of the elected members training motion in front of them? Does everyone have a copy of that? Does anyone have any questions? If not, do I have a mover for the motion?
Councillor Boyd has a question.
Councillor Boyd, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, through the Chair. I'm not sure who can or will answer. I'm just wondering, the table that's attached, I'm just wondering what that's supposed to be reflecting, because I know myself, I've completed more of the essential trainings than are listed, and I'm wondering if that can be updated to reflect that at all, please.
Yes, look, certainly if you see that you've done some training that's not reflected here, we would like to know that, and we'll get that evidence. All this information has been provided to us by Welga, so we've taken on board their records, but if you've got some other data that's missing, please submit that so we can update the table.
My records have already been received by the city.
Councillor, some of your training was done outside the reporting period, I'm advised. That's why it wouldn't be here. So the reporting period is from last October through till now.
Follow-up question, Councillor Boyd? No? Are there any other questions? Does everyone have a copy of the officer recommendation? I don't have a page number. Do I have a question,
Sorry,
Councillor?
I've just lost it, but I had an idea that it talked about stuff that was going on later on in the year. Yes. But if we're saying it's only training up to date.
Let me explain that to you. So you are now required under the Act to do X amount, and you would have achieved all of those X amounts within the 9 months had the COVID not happened. So some of your training programs under the essentials have been put forward to September and October of this year. So just for clarity, as this is going out in the public and that people understand that there was a break and a delay in the training program. Notwithstanding that we do have to October, but the legislation requires that we have to report by the 31st of July each year. So that's why it's got a little bit, confusing, because we thought we had till October, but then we found out last week, no, we have to have a report. So that's why it's broken.
Councillor Sewell, you have a question?
I do. Sorry, I wasn't aware of those implications. So what does that mean specifically for councillors if they haven't undertaken, for instance, the testing by the 31st of July?
It doesn't mean anything. It means that it just needs to be reported on our website by the 31st of July, notwithstanding that you have till October to complete your 12 months or those 5 essential programs by. So there won't be any implications other than, it's a reporting requirement.
Okay, do I have a mover for this motion? Does everyone have the motion? Does anyone wish to move it? Councillor Boyd, seconded Councillor Blair. Is there going to be any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Billage, you'll not vote. Oh, sorry, it's hard to see your hand. I apologise. That's carried unanimously. So we've got another item, the nomination by Councillor Stallard. Does everyone have a copy of it?
Madam Chair, I'd like to raise a point of order.
Yes.
I'd like to challenge your decision to include this item as urgent business.
Yes.
Under 5.4 of the standing orders, new business of urgent nature, in cases of extreme urgency or other special circumstances, matters may, on a motion by the presiding member that is carried by the meeting, be raised without notice and decided by the meeting. So I would like to put the vote to the vote that the meeting hear this motion.
A comment from General Counsel about that?
Sorry, that the meeting not hear this motion is what you're asking?
No, that the meeting make a decision whether to consider this motion or not.
Yeah, okay, that's correct. You can do that if you would like to put a motion to the floor to see if the rest of the council agree with hearing this.
Okay, so the motion is that the council agree to hear the late request for this draft nomination by Councillor Stallard. You're moving that, Councillor O'Connor?
That's correct.
Is there a seconder?
No.
You're moving,
that
you're
we
asking the
decide
question.
To hear. Yeah.
So how do we do this? Do I ask for a show of hands? Seconder? You second it? So...
I'll be very brief.
Go on.
Councillors, this is a very, very big decision, and it goes to the core of what makes us as a council and what makes running on council achievable for some people. And I think we can't be so flippant that an item comes in at 1 hour and 45 minutes prior to the start of the meeting that has implications that are so huge, such as this. So I would prefer to defer this to the next round of meetings.
Councillor Sewell?
Point of clarity. So are you seeking a deferment or are you seeking to vote whether it's discussed at this meeting?
Well, I prefer it gets rejected. If we vote not to discuss it, it can only come up at the next meeting, next round of meetings.
So you're not seeking a deferment. You're putting in a position to the vote and for people to vote against it. Is that correct?
To vote not to hear the item
Not to hear
tonight.
the item tonight.
Correct.
Do you support that, Councillor
I
Sewell?
don't support that. That wasn't my understanding of what the purpose of
So
the motion
everyone
was.
has now heard Councillor O'Connor's motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Boyd? Does everyone understand? So the motion is that we defer this, don't hear it tonight. We've got a mover and a seconder. Do we need to go into debate or do you just want to vote on it?
Madam Mayor, just for clarification, you're not deferring it, you're just not going to hear it tonight. Therefore, Councillor Stallard would resubmit it in the normal process next month, okay?
Yes.
So it's not a deferral, anybody. It's just that you're saying no.
So the motion is that we are not hearing this tonight. So we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour?
Can I speak against it?
Yes. Sorry, I have to go to the mover. You've spoken for it. I need to go to the
It's
seconder.
very simple. That's fine. Yeah.
So did the seconder wish to speak, and then I'll go to someone against it.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief. Look, it is quite an important item, and I obviously, like most councillors, wasn't aware of it. Would like to have had time to prepare something rather than just try and do something on the hop. So That's why I support this.
Speaker against. All we're discussing now is whether we hear the motion, not the motion. That's what the motion is, yeah.
Look, Madam Chair, I supported the previous motion, but this one, to me, takes precedent over the other motion. This is what a lot of the issues that we have to put up with.
Point of order, Councillor Giardina. You're only speaking on whether we hear it, not on what...
I think we should hear it, because this is where the nuts and bolts of the stuff that we deal with here and we have issues with all the time, this should take precedent over the previous motion, in my view.
Okay.
Can I offer an opportunity for this one?
Yes.
Yes, a clarification and then maybe an opportunity to resolve it on the spot. Originally, the idea of the motion was to piggyback onto your motion. It was going to be an amendment. I sent it to the CEO and governance, and they said to me that it cannot be an amendment. It has to be a motion in its own right. And I did offer the opportunity to say, well, on those grounds, should we then take it out and put it into a following?
So you happy to withdraw it?
So I think on those grounds, in spite of some of the comments, I would say that we should at this stage, because it's late. I think we should turn around and say, okay, we'll withdraw this until the next OCM.
So if the mover withdraws the motion, is that acceptable? Okay, so there is no
Madam
need...
Chair, if I can just say one thing here. Councillor Stallard makes comment about consultation. That probably would go hand in hand with your motion. So I don't know how that's going to work if he's going to defer it till next month.
Okay, so there is no need to put the motion of Councillor O'Connor because this has been withdrawn. Are you happy with that, Councillor O'Connor? Okay. And we've already closed the meeting to the public, so we close this meeting at 9. Oh, is there? We've reopened it, that's what I meant. So I declare this meeting closed at 9:50.